In this video, we are going to explore the recovery forward. It's a pretty simple action, but it is one that's very useful with different situations. So we're going to explore what a recovery forward is, and specifically the right situations to use it. Before we do that though, let me talk a little bit about the action. So a recovery forward is where, from your lunge, if you go out in your lunge, instead of recovering back, which is a safe position, that's where most fencers are going to want to go if their attack fails, they go, oh, my right of way is over, my opponent's going to take their turn, so I better return back to a safe position. The recovery forward is the opposite. So instead of retreating after your first action fails, so here's my first intention, no success, instead of retreating back, I'm going to recover forward. So you're bringing your back leg forward as opposed to your front leg back. This is the important distinction with recovery forward and recovery back. Now there are a few different examples of this that we're going to be exploring. The first one is just a basic recovery into an on guard, which is a useful tool if your opponent doesn't immediately react to your first attack, so you can step in and you can possibly parry. If your opponent starts to retreat, at least the distance isn't that great. If you are doing another recovery, you can recover with point and line. So again, same situation, if your opponent doesn't immediately react, you can recover established point and line, and then your opponent is again still defensive. If they don't read that and they attack into you, you get the point. The third one is the transition into another lunge. So if you lunge, it's no good, you recover forward, you can lunge again. This is useful especially if your opponent is still on the retreat, but they haven't really tried to retake any kind of right of way to attack you. So there are different situations that we're going to explore, but this is fundamentally what a recovery forward is. It just allows you to continue to advance and close the distance with your opponent. The first example we're going to look at with Alexander is the recovery forward into the original on guard position. So this is useful for a multitude of reasons, but we'll just keep it very simple. If we're on guard here, I'm going to put on my mask. Alexander is going to make a lunge. So if she lunges and she doesn't hit because I step away, she can recover forward. Now this is useful because if it's my turn and the distance was so great on my retreat, if I make a lunge, she can parry, and now she can finish the action again. So the recovery forward into the on guard is a very safe choice if you're attacking from very far away. So this can be something akin to a false attack, where you are landing too far from the target. So again, let's even open that up even more. So if Alexander takes a step back, and she makes a lunge from here, and I step back, she recovers forward. The distance is pretty significant, so that's why she doesn't want to recover back. There's no reason to. The distance is so significant that she can afford to recover forward. So again, if I make my lunge, I parry, and then she can retake right away and catch me with second intention. So a recovery forward is very useful if the distance allows for it. So if you attack and your opponent retreats and the distance is significant, you can recover forward because recovering back just opens up even more distance. Neither opponent is going to really be able to do anything with that. So long as your blades are not meeting, a recovery forward isn't that dangerous, and in fact just keeps you in the game a little bit longer. The next example we're going to look at is a recovery forward into point and line. So this is very useful if you've managed to read that your opponent is not going to immediately react to your first attack. So if your first intention is no, and they don't have a response to it, establishing line just gives you right away again, and then you're in control. So Jason here is going to help us with that example. So if we stand on guard, masks off. So if Jason makes a lunge, and my response is to retreat, he recovers forward and keeps the line. If I didn't respond after his first attack fails, and now I do, he gets the point, because he established a line before I started my action. So if we look at that again, he makes his lunge, I retreat, he recovers forward with the line, I attack into it. Because of the delay, I allow him to recover. I allow him to establish line. My lunge, my attack, no longer has right of way. So establishing with line If again, like our recovery forward into an en-garde position, you have that distance that you're not necessarily in jeopardy of your opponent immediately hitting you, and if you've read your opponent and that they're not going to take an action against you right away on your recovery, then you're safe. So point in line, very, very helpful in retaking right away after the attack is known, so long as your opponent doesn't immediately react and take their turn. So very useful. Our last example of a recovery forward is a transition into a new lunge. Ali Zagat is going to help with this demonstration, but before we do that, just a quick little note here. Bear in mind, recovering forward and lunging immediately again does not mean you have right of way. Just like point in line, just like the recovery to an en-garde position, this is where your attack ends. So recovering forward and lunging again doesn't really mean you have right of way. Again, it's contingent on what your opponent does. So if we get on guard here, Ali Zagat is going to do a lunge. I'm going to step away, and she's going to recover and lunge again. So first lunge, I retreat, she recovers forward, and lunges again. So you can do this with the classic recovery forward, where you're back into the en-garde, or you can do so with the line, so you can lunge, recover forward, lunge again. Both are perfectly fine, but remember, your first attack is no. Just because you recover forward and lunge again doesn't mean it's yes. So let's look at why this is effective. So again, en-garde, 2 steps back. So if she makes her lunge and I retreat, she recovers forward, I don't immediately react, she knows I'm going to run away, she lunges again. So long as distance is on your side. You can even combine this element with a recovery forward where you lunge, you advance, and then you lunge again. Both are perfectly fine. The reason why you want to transition into a lunge is if you know your opponent is more defensive. They're just going to retreat. So if that distance is always opening up, that recovery forward, and possibly another explosive lunge, it's perfectly fine. But do remember, you don't have right of way with that second lunge if your opponent has decided to advance or has immediately started lunge against you because it's their turn. You would only want to use it if they're trying to maintain distance by retreat. That's the only time that you would really want to employ a second lunge. So very important, a useful tool.